Thank you for staying tuned. The Nigerian Electricity Regulatory Commission has approved an increase of 300% electricity tariff for Band A consumers in the country. The Vice Chairman of NERC announced the approval during a press conference in Abuja, stating that the rate increase will only affect 15% of electricity customers in the country. Customers under the classification who receive 20 hours of electricity supply daily will pay 225 naira per kilowatt hour effective April 1st, 2024. For more on this, I introduced him earlier. He is the founder and chief executive officer of ZKJ Energy Partners Limited, pioneer MD CEO of the Nigerian Bulk Electricity Trading PLC, NBET. I'm being joined by Mr. Rumundaka Wonodi. Good afternoon, Mr. Wonodi. It's good to have you on the program.
Very much, Tolu. Good to see you.
Yes. First, I want to start with this. Were you expecting this increase, looking at what's been on ground? And what do you make of, make us understand more what this really means for us as Nigerians? Thank you.
Well, one thing that we definitely know was that somewhere along the line, the subsidy was going to taper down, right? Because far back, as in February, no, back a little bit. Last year, the regulator had indicated that going by what they had then, that the subsidy would be 1.6 trillion this year. And then by January, when we had some forex FX adjustment, the tariff had gone up to, or the subsidy was about 240 billion a month, right? And therefore, for keen watchers and observers, we knew that the tariff, the subsidy is unsustainable, but we were not privy, or we couldn't tell when this was going to come. Therefore, it came as a surprise to everyone, and NERC has alluded to why it came the way it did.
But the argument about cost-reflective tariff, of course, has been on for some time now. So would you say that this is really justifiable considering the level of supply that we have at the moment?
Well, so for those people who are in Band A, if truly they will get the 20 hours of service, and if also they had clearly shown their willingness to pay for the service, then this should be okay for them. So what do I mean? These will typically be consumers who, when they do not have power, will turn on their generators and would want to have power like 20 hours a day. Everybody would want to have power 20 hours a day, but be clear that not everybody can afford to pay for that because of the general state of the economy, right? So is it justifiable? Well, if these folks can get 20 hours of service as promised, then it might make sense for them, right? If truly they will have to retire their generators and diesel and have power, then it makes sense. Remember that you do not have to consume for 20 hours. You can limit your consumption. You don't need to run your air conditioners for all that period. You might run it, cool the room, and then use fan to supplement. So it's a totally different thing. But to the point that you are alluding to, there still is a big gap in supply. For a country our size, 4,000 megawatts, it's pretty just scratching the need.
Indeed. Let me take it up from there. And you also know, Mr. Wonodi, that we have issues around technical and commercial losses. We still have the issue of estimated billings that Nigerians are complaining about, which is also on the other side. So in all of this, where's the interest of the consumer?
And so Tolu, this is one of the things where I align with most people, consumers, and I think that, I don't know, but on whose side this is, but I seriously think that there is overt focus on tariffs. Don't get me wrong, we need to have the appropriate tariff to incentivize investment, but when you look at a distribution company, what you have is that you have a revenue requirement that is supposed to fund the DisCo's operations, including the power that it purchases from distribution companies and, from generation companies, and the services it receives from the transmission company, then up to gas supply, right? That revenue requirement is made up of a price and a quantity. Over the years, for the past 10 years, we've been on this price and the quantity is not moving, right? So to your point, we really need to make all the investments to get us to the point where we're actually seeing about 6,000, 8,000, 12,000, and then up to 20,000, or even 30,000, 40,000 where Nigeria needs to be, right? So I think that what we should be focused on is the government has said that it's going to save 1.14 trillion naira from this increase. So remember, they still have another 1.6 or 1.4 that they still would be subsidizing the market with, right? So they've not removed all the subsidy. What are we doing with this $1 billion that's coming in? Where are the investments to be made? Where in transmission? Where in distribution network? So that at the end of the day, we have more supply to homes and businesses, so that when you meter them, you're metering electrons and you're not metering just air or quiet, right? So I know that you're going to allude to metering and then, estimated billing, but I think that even more important is the fact that people should have service and have supply to be metered.
Now, I'm going to ask you this question. I want your views on it. Would you agree? Some have said that it seems like the privatization exercise itself seems to have some issues. I don't want to say, some say it's faulty. Would you say with this development, really there needs to be an overview of that process?
You don't need an overview of the process. We have a lot of overviews already, right? We have the new electricity act that's been put in place that is going to devolve, hopefully, the regulation of the distribution companies to states, which, to my mind, is the much more appropriate body to regulate distribution. It's a state that understands how it wants to build out the state, make investments in distribution company. If my state, River State, it's now building a new Port Harcourt city, it should not be coming to Abuja to determine the capital investment to be made in distributing electricity to that area. It should be done within the state, right? So there is enough that has happened that can help the electricity industry more than trying to revisit privatization and go back to who bought it or who did not buy it. Let's move forward with, trying to carve the DisCos and put them in such a way that their footprints are limited along state lines, right? So the Benin Electricity Distribution Company can go down to at least no more than, or at least 4 subsidiaries that are within the boundaries of the 4 states that electricity distribution company covers. I don't want to go back to 2013. I don't think that.
I agree with you. I really agree with you. But when I introduced you, I said that you're the pioneer MD CEO of the Nigerian Bulk Electricity Trading PLC. I want you to speak to us about the continuous grid collapse that we've had in recent times. That is also something that is worrisome. What are we doing? We are not diversifying sources.
Well, again, you go back to what I said just a few moments ago. We need to make investments in transmission and in the network so that we can have more supply, we can have more reliable infrastructure to convey power from generation companies to distribution companies and then to homes and businesses. We need to make that investment in the network. And once you begin to do that, that will begin to take care of a grid collapse and what have you.
So can I say on a final note, with this move now by NERC and more investments being expected like we've raised, what is your, should I say, the outlook for Nigeria's electricity sector with all of the new laws being instituted by this administration? What do you think would happen in maybe medium, short to long term?
Well, one of the things that with this new policy is to make sure that people who are on band A do get the service that is promised 20 hours a day, 7 days a week. There is a provision that if for 7 consecutive days that service is not available, then they will downgrade the feeder. The feeder is a source for maybe a street or +2 streets, right? You will downgrade that to band B or not. Well, I don't know that 7 consecutive days does not have an opening for people to game in it, so that you can give people Monday, Tuesday, and then you can jump till Sunday. That's 5 days. The whole idea is that if you really put people on band A, they can very well retire their generators, right? That will be one thing. But what do I see going forward for the sector is I would like to hear more from the federal government, the state governments about the investments they want to make, right? It's the tariff will just allow people to pay what needs to be paid here. Remember that even at this, the discos supposedly are not recovering all their costs. So I don't know how much investments could be made. So let me give you an example. If you look at the revenue requirement that the regulator approved for TCN for the year, it's less than 200, it's about 250 billion, right, naira for this network, right? Of that, 53% or thereabout is for OPEX, which is paying staff and what have you. And then you then have capital. The other is provided for capital, and some of that would include depreciation. So how much can you really, with this, from the market, make the investments that will give us a robust transmission system? The government, public financing needs to come to the table. The government is going to find a way, and saving this 1.14 trillion, add much more to it, and then build out the network. The federal government, FGM power, should run along with what it needs to do, and TCN complementing it so that we can have a better network. That's the pathway I see for getting more power. I don't want to, the tariffs is very, very key, very important, and for the people who are paying, they should get that service.
Well, indeed, I must thank you so much, Mr. Rumundaka Wunodi, who's the founder, CEO, ZKJ Energy Partners Limited, also pioneer, MD, CEO of the Nigerian Bulk Electricity Trading PLC, NBET. Thank you. We appreciate this. We hope to have you on the program some other time.
Thank you very much, Tolu.
All right, well, staying in Abuja now, we also have the Commissioner of Legal Licensing and Compliance with the Nigerian Electricity Regulatory Commission, NERC, Mr. Dafe Akpineye. He joins us from our Abuja studios. Good afternoon, Mr. Dafe. Can you hear me, Mr. Dafe?
Yes, I can hear you, Mr. Gunjobi. Can you hear me?
All right, thank you so much. Good afternoon, and thanks so much for your patience. Now, I'm going to ask you the question this way. I think we have over 3,000 disco feeders across the country, and we would have to know how many of them will be on band A and all of that. But my question really to you will be, compliance. How are you going to monitor compliance? Are you sure that if I'm on band B, I won't be moved to band A and I'll be charged band A when I'm not getting services of band A? What really would NERC do to make sure that those that are supposed to pay for this will pay?
Thanks, Mr. Gunjobi. I think on the issue of compliance, compliance started before the order was issued. So we didn't want to issue an order that we couldn't implement. Substantially, we had to do a review of the existing feeders, work with the DISCOs to confirm the feeders that could actually provide band A service. And as my vice chairman said yesterday, you would have noticed that there was a downgrade on the feeders listed as actual band A feeders to about 500 feeders. And we've confirmed that those are the feeders that can actually provide band A service. And from a review standpoint, we've said, okay, these feeders are performing at band A level. And that was what was placed in the orders, and DISCOs have been mandated. From a compliance level, after the order was issued, since we've confirmed that these are the actual feeders that provide the band A service, there are steps to be taken. One, there's a communication element to it, whereby most customers do not know why they are out of supply. So in the order, we've introduced a communication element that for the customers affected by the review, bearing in mind that only 15% are affected and 85% are not. The 15% that are affected, where the band A service cannot be provided within a 48-hour window, the DISCO has been mandated to explain to the customer that, okay, perhaps it's a local fault or there's a problem somewhere, and this is what we're doing to restore it. So if the DISCO doesn't do, so you have a 48-hour window to do that, then if it exceeds 7 days, once you have a 7-day window, there's the issue of automatic downgrade. So where the DISCO can provide the service for 7 days, the customers has to be downgraded to the appropriate band of service that is being provided by the DISCO. And with a downgrade, it means that you're no longer affected by the review, means you move to a lower tariff band. And we have ongoing measures to monitor this at the Commission on a daily basis, whereby we're engaging them, seeing what's being done. DISCOs have been mandated to publish on their websites and social media channels the actual service provided on prior days, so customers know what is being done. And where there's been any breach, the Commission shall exercise its regulatory powers in accordance with the Electricity Act.
Now, let me move forward to ask you, Mr. Akpeneye, I hope I got the pronunciation right. Does it mean that the federal government is no more subsidizing electricity tariff, or what percentage of subsidy do we still have on the electricity side? Okay, thank you, Mr. Gunjobi. Governments exist for the welfare and security of their people, and the subsidy issue is a policy issue. So as we speak today, 85% of the customer population is being subsidized by government. But we need to move to ensure some level of certainty, and it's been agreed that the customers who live in areas where investments have been made in the networks to guarantee 20 to 24 hours of supply on a daily basis now pay the actual cost for the services that they enjoy. So only 15% of the customer population will be are affected by the review, and 85% of the entire remaining customer population, which is the remainder, are not affected. So those customers are still covered by the prevailing subsidy by the federal government. Now, I would also ask you, what has been previous outcomes, of course, before now, monitoring of infractions by discos, of course, failure to deliver supply at committed level? What has NERC done before now so that Nigerians will be sure that, yes, their interests will be protected?
Okay, so we need to be mindful that when we say infractions, a distribution company distributes power that is supplied to it. So the Commission has to follow due process in treating infractions. Where there's no supply on the grid, there's nothing for the DISCO to supply. So the Commission takes a due process approach to treating infractions by utilities. Where the infraction is identified to be that of the utility itself, the Commission exercises regulatory powers to, within the extant regulatory provisions, to address it. So the Commission does treat that seriously. So, but we need to be clear what the actual issue is. So if there's no supply on the grid, that's from a system disturbance or there's a transmission issue, that problem cannot be laid squarely at a distribution company. It's a relay race, and the DISCO only gets responsibility when the baton is passed to it, meaning there's been generation put on the grid that has been wheeled by TCN and sent to the utility. But other infractions are treated in accordance with the law, and there's been a change in the legal framework with the signing into law of the Electricity Act that gives the Commission more powers now to address issues in the sector.
I'm sure there's been a series of comments since yesterday when this was instituted. I'm sure the Commission will have been responding to many of them. But as we move on, I want to ask that, are there no Band A customers on estimated billings? And if that is happening, what will NERC do?
Okay, so on the Band A, in the Band A customer segmentation, almost 70% of the customers in Band A are metered, and the Commission has prioritized the metering of Band A customers. So we've discussed with the utilities, and on the various metering options, there's a priority to ensure that that customer segmentation is, we have 100% metering. We close out the metering gap in the Band A segment. And it's only a small percentage of Band A customers that remain unmetered. So we are seeking to address that. And until that is being addressed, the caps will be applied. And we recently carried out a regulatory enforcement on the capping order. So the DISCOs have been mandated to ensure that there's strict compliance with the capping order for all customers. But for the Band A customers, there's priorities being given to ensure that the metering gap is closed, and it's a smaller number of customers. So we are looking at about less than 30% of the Band A customers that remain unmetered.
So, well, back again to those not on Band A. For those that are on Band A, does it mean now that they are eternally confined to erratic power supply, poor power supply around their vicinity? Is that what it means? Once I'm not in Band A, maybe I should expect lesser power than what we used to have, since most of the power now will be concentrated to Band A that are ready to pay.
Okay, I think we need to address that. Non-discrimination is a critical principle in utility management. And utilities have what's called a universal service obligation, whereby you are mandated to serve all your customers. It appears now that what we have is we've looked at the way the networks are configured, and the customers that are within the Band A area, on the basis of investments that have been made and the state of those networks, are in a position to receive more, better supply. And from the network segmentation, you see that it goes from Band A to Band E, meaning that the Band B customers will continue to receive Band B service, Band C customers will continue to receive Band C service. And as this is a nudge to the utilities to invest, and they now know that, wait a minute, with greater investments being made, if I transition, improve service in an area, I can transition a Band B or Band C customer to a Band A customer. So greater investments will be made to ensure that customers in the other bands, work is being done to push them to the Band A level to ensure that they get 20 to 24 hours of supply on a daily basis. And that only comes with investments.
Almost finally, before I let you go, before now, some customers on Band A saying they are not getting the needed services or the required services, dedicated services. What did the Commission do at that point with regards to service failure in the past?
Okay, so like I'd said when you alluded to in the initial question, that when a customer doesn't get a service, we need to find out what's the root cause of the issue. So if there's an overall generation problem, where there's a dip in generation, it's going to affect all service bands from Band A to Band E. So where it is attributed to being, okay, these are local issues that have not been addressed, the DISCO has a responsibility to downgrade that customer to the appropriate customer band. And that's what has been, that's where the emphasis has been, with adequate measures being put in place to ensure that customers get compensated. So the issue now is, yes, when there's no supply, we need to be mindful that it's not always the DISCO's problem, right? When there's no supply on the grid, there's no supply on the grid, right? Because the way it works is the GENCOs generate the power, TCN transmits, and from below transmission level, the DISCOs receive that power and send on to end-use customers. So where DISCOs have not met their obligation, right, the Commission has held them accountable for that. But we need to identify where the root cause of the problem is and deal with it squarely. But where it's found to be that of the utility, the DISCO itself, they've been held accountable and treated accordingly.
So finally, almost 300% increase is what we are talking about here. Considering the economic situation, many people have talked about this, are we likely to see any review? Is that possible?
I beg your pardon, could you take that question again?
I said, is it possible for any review? Because businesses, manufacturers are already complaining about this, that this will affect their businesses. So is it possible for any review on this moving forward?
Okay, Mr. Ogunjobi, you need to be mindful of the fact that the Commission has a statutory responsibility to look at the sector as a whole and determine what the actual cost is. Investors will only come into the business because once they invest, I can recoup my investments. And since most downstream, it's a monopoly, and you heard Mr. Wanodi speaking about it, that DISCOs have what's called a revenue requirement. The Commission has a responsibility to determine what is the actual cost, right? And that's the cost that sustains the entire value chain. So what all of us pay as end-use customers sustains transmission and generation and services in the sector. So that cost, we have to state it for what it is, right? Any shift in that cost becomes a policy decision of government. And the policy decision of government today is 85% of the customer population are not affected by this review, right? 85% of all the electricity customers in Nigeria today are still being subsidized and paying the rates they were paying 2 years ago. So there's no review for them. But we also need to ensure balance and attract greater investments into the sector. And that only comes by ensuring that if investments are made, investors will get a return. And there's an incentive to put money into the sector. So by doing that, whilst 85% of the customer segmentation of customer population are still subsidized, the 15% investors now see a need, one, that if I provide service to this 15%, a return, there's an increase in the return we get, and they're further incentivized to start looking at the bands B, C, D, and E customers to ensure that they can be transitioned from their bands to being band A customers.
Well, interesting. We'll keep a tab on this. It's a running story. We thank you so much for speaking with us today, Mr. Dafe Akpeneye. He is the Commissioner, Legal, Licensing, and Compliance at the Nigerian Electricity Regulatory Commission, NERC. Thank you. Do enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you, Mr. Gunjobi.
All right, then. Well, let's talk some